maybe you should have tried to be more consistent and be more credible? I don't know. That happens in every trial. That's not new. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Merel and boy do I have a treat for you today. So I literally just got home from doing some groceries and I opened YouTube and I saw that Amber Heard had actually done an interview at the Today Show. And I have thoughts, even though I haven't even watched it yet. But honestly, with all that I've seen throughout the entire trial, which I've seen in its entirety and many parts of it multiple times, and from what I've seen from the interviews that came after the trial and from the social media statements from her and from Eve Barlow, and I'm not really expecting this to be an interview that makes me think happy thoughts. Well, it will make me think happy thoughts, but that's because I'm telling myself, think happy thoughts, think happy thoughts. So, yeah. Now, as you might see, my hair did get a little upgrade. It's actually supposed to be this color, but you know what happens when you dye it and you force the color to cohabitate with your hair? It kind of wants to leave after a while. So we just force it back in. That's what we do. Anyway, I'm gonna watch this. I'm terrified. And I'm gonna give you my my honest and true reactions while it's happening. I'm probably gonna pause it a lot. I'm probably gonna be frustrated a lot. But I still hope that in some kind of way she'll pleasantly surprise me, because people can change and people can learn. And she might have done just that. I don't expect it to happen, but it's a possibility that I'm very willing to entertain. So I don't think there's anything we can do except just, you know, getting into it. As you can see at the top right here, it already says in the title, I don't blame the jury. Who's willing to bet that she is implicitly gonna blame the jury? I haven't seen the interview yet, but I've only seen one or two remarks about something she said about how the jury have been, about how social media have been treating her. And if this is about social media and the jury, I bet your ass she's gonna implicitly be blaming the jury, because it's no use talking about social media with a title like I don't blame the jury if you're not gonna imply that the jury has actually broken their oath to look at social media. So, yeah. I keep stalling. I just need to do it. So, here we go.
I don't care what one thinks about me or what judgments you want to make about what happened in the privacy of my own home and my marriage behind closed doors.
Let's go back to that first statement, right? I mean, did she honestly think I don't care what one thinks about me?
I don't care what one thinks about me.
I think you do, honestly. I think you do quite a lot, by the way. I also noticed something that she does often when she's probably not entirely being truthful, or probably being a little bit emotionally manipulative is a big word, but playing the person who's listening. She does a lot of head movements and she's eye fluttering a lot, and I guess we're gonna see a lot of sad faces. And there's nothing wrong with having a sad face, because if her story is true and this is happening to her and she is actually unjustly being criticized, then it sucks. And if that's true, obviously you would be sad and obviously it would be very hard, but I'm not saying I'm not believing a word she says right out of the gate. She might be saying some things that are true, but after all I've learned from her, I just don't expect much of it to be true. And I've kind of gotten to know her tells a little bit. So, yeah. Let's crack on.
Or what judgments you want to make about what happened in the privacy of my own home and my marriage behind closed doors. I don't presume the average person should know those things, and so I don't take it personally. But even somebody who is sure I'm deserving of all this hate and vitriol, even if you think that I'm lying, you still couldn't look me in the eye and tell me that you think on social media there's been a fair representation. You can.
Amber, there's been a fair representation. If it wasn't fair, it was probably not fair for Depp. It was fair for you. Now, I realized during editing this video that I had actually missed the words social media from Amber Heard's comment, so I was responding as if she was claiming that her representation in the courtroom wasn't fair, instead of the representation on social media. However, since she also repeatedly claims that she wasn't treated fairly in the courtroom, I've decided to leave my reaction in the video. Please proceed. You have not been wronged in your representation, or are you blaming your lawyers again? Also, saying I don't care what judgments you might have about what happened in my marriage, that was the point of the trial. If that wasn't the point of it, I don't know what else was. I mean, obviously it was a defamation suit over the op-ed, but it was kind of instrumental for that op-ed to know what happened in their marriage behind closed doors. And don't give me the whole behind closed doors argument again, because no one knows what happens behind closed doors. That's the point of closed doors. So don't keep bringing that up, because the whole point of a trial is try to find out what happened behind closed doors, even though you can't know what happened behind closed doors. So already I'm mildly peeved.
Not tell me that you think that this has been fair.
Of course, we also touched on what happened in court and what the jury decided. There's no polite way to say it. The jury looked at the evidence you presented. They listened to your testimony, and they did not believe you. They thought you were lying.
How could, I'll put it this way, how could they make a judgment? How could they not come to that conclusion? They had sat in those seats and heard over 3 weeks of nonstop, relentless testimony from paid employees and
Honey, do you really think that the jury is so stupid that they cannot recognize when people are not being truthful? Do you really think that they're that stupid that they're gonna look at a bunch of actors and then just assume that they're right and then just stop listening? I bet that these jurors took their job seriously, and they are probably aware that first you have the plaintiff's case in chief and then you have the defendant's case in chief, and you shouldn't really make a judgment until you've heard both sides. Obviously there's some kind of prejudicial effect from having one first and then the other, but that happens in every trial. That's not new. And throwing in the whole paid employees things, it's not like everyone who gets paid also doesn't have a moral center. Being paid doesn't erase your integrity, right? I mean, it's just, if I don't know who you are right there at the other end of the camera, if you're getting paid by anyone, does that mean that you're also automatically gonna just blindly agree with everything that the person paying you is saying? I don't think so. It's just a ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous thing to say if you have no proof that what they're saying is not correct. If they're paid actors that are just up there to lie, if they're paid employees that are just up there to lie, then the evidence would not support what they're saying. And as it turns out, the evidence didn't support what you were saying. That's not what's supposed to happen. If this is true, what she's saying, and they were paid employees, right? So then you have his case in chief, and then you have all these people who are just up there lying, and then the evidence would not be in your favor, and then your case in chief comes up, and then yet you get to show them the evidence, and you get to disprove all the things that the paid employees were saying. But that didn't happen, did it? I mean, I hope that you can recognize that I'm not just throwing blind hate and vitriol at her, because these are facts. These are arguments. This is logic. I'm not making this shit up. I'm not being hateful for the sake of being hateful. I'm being logical and frustrated. I realize I didn't have it on full screen. One thing I do like is that she's not, at least not yet, we still have a minute to go, it could go anywhere, but one thing I like is that she's not being so completely over the top emotional like she was being in court. This is a little bit more mellow, and that makes it actually a little bit more believable. So I gotta throw her that bone.
Towards the end of the trial, randos, as I say.
So you don't blame the jury?
Randos, as you say, yeah. But obviously the jury didn't think so, and if you're just the one saying it, then it's just your word. And frankly, we could say the same thing about your witnesses, but that would also make absolutely no sense if we have no proof for it, right? I mean, I'm not sitting here claiming that any of her witnesses were only there to be paid actors, paid employees, and randos to somehow support her point. I'm not saying that, because I have no proof for it, and I have no solid reason to think so. I mean, even though Dr. Hughes was horrendously biased, I'm not sitting here and saying that she was biased only because she was paid, because I have nothing to support that except for the fact that she was paid, and that's it. And being paid is what expert witnesses do. That's how it works. But just because you're paid doesn't say anything. Most of us, the overwhelming majority of us, get paid by someone, and that doesn't mean we'll just stop having any kind of integrity. And honestly, the employees, which, by the way, they're not all Depp's employees, they're not all on his payroll, and saying, well, yeah, but you're dependent on his success, is just a roundabout way of still throwing in the same argument. But most of these people have been with him for decades. And I don't know how statistically likely it is that that many people would stay with one guy for decades if he was indeed an abuser and if he was indeed horrible. Maybe one or two might, but all of them? Really? And aside from that, when they were praising, when they were complimenting Johnny, they didn't come across as very unbelievable, and it didn't come across like they were lying or anything. It just looks like they've found a pretty sweet job. They're getting paid and they're working with a friend, you know? That's the best thing. Everyone has to put food on the table. And what's better than earning money to put food on the table by working with someone you actually like? If you'll remember, Kate James, who was her assistant, didn't stay for decades. I mean, honestly, she hasn't even lived long enough for it, but she doesn't seem to have people with the same kind of loyalty around her, except for her sister, which is not entirely fair because they're sisters. And even her friends aren't, or don't appear to be friends anymore. And none of them came to court to testify in real life. And I find that interesting. Now, there's tons of reasons why people are not able or not willing to come and testify live. Maybe they're on the other side of the country. Maybe they don't have the money. Maybe there's other engagements. There's tons of reasons. But it's statistically unlikely that all of them are unable to testify in court. I just don't think, I don't think it's a good look. So let's crack on.
I don't blame them. It wasn't, I don't blame them. I actually understand. He's a beloved character and people feel they know him. He's a fantastic actor.
Their job is to not be dazzled by that.
She blinks a lot. Like, she blinks so much more than I've seen her do during the trial, except for when she was on the stand. Now, these studio lights are very bright and it might cause you to blink more, but it looks like she tends to blink twice instead of just one when she's probably not being 100% truthful. There's no such thing as human lie detection. You can't say this is true, this is a lie, based on their behavior or their body language. But you can see clusters, you can see patterns, and it's kind of sus. I have to commend her for not going on an entirely vitriolic rant of calling them all misogynists or slaves to the patriarchy or any of that shit. I have to commend her for at least trying to come across as actually kind by saying that she doesn't blame them. But I'm still not entirely feeling it. Not yet. Maybe she'll still make me. We'll have to wait and see.
Their job is to look at the facts and the evidence, and they did not believe your testimony or your evidence.
Again, how could they, after listening to 3.5 weeks of testimony about how I was a non-credible person?
Quite simply, by being human and by having independent thought. That's how. Stop just assuming that they're stupid and that they have no integrity and that they're unable to spot truths and lies, because even if you look at it objectively, Johnny Depp didn't have nearly as many inconsistencies in his testimony as Amber Heard did. So maybe you should have tried to be more consistent and be more credible? I don't know. Maybe be less aggressive towards Camille Vasquez and less arrogantly angry, because it's totally understandable if you're an actual victim and you're there in the stand and you're being cross-examined. It's totally fair to be angry at the one who's cross-examining you. But she had this kind of, she had this haughty, kind of arrogant air to her, kind of like a I'm better than you. How dare you question me? I will fucking kill you. That kind of air, and that didn't really help. Also, you were just more or less blatantly gaslighting the jury, and I'm sure they picked up on at least a little bit of it. I mean, do I have to remind you of the whole donation pledge thing? I don't think I have to. And that's only one instance that's just very emblematic for the entire thing. The amount of inconsistencies, it was just way beyond what you'd expect from a human fallible memory, you know? Of course, we're not perfect. Of course, we have gaps in our memory or we misremember things, especially when there's trauma involved. That's absolutely perfectly reasonable. But there's a limit. And the worst thing is when you don't take accountability for the things that you misremembered, and when you don't take accountability for the shit you try to pull, like the whole pledge donate conundrum, that's where you run into problems. If you get defensive about any inconsistencies instead of owning up to them, maybe they might have believed you. Maybe I might have believed you. But no.
Not to believe a word that came out of my mouth.
We're going to have more of our exclusive interview with...
All right, that was it already. Apparently the entire interview is coming tomorrow, so I'll probably, maybe, likely be making another video about it, and that's probably going to be a long one. But so far, I have to say that I do really appreciate that she did tone down her attitude. I do really appreciate that she calmed down a little, that she is not as defensive, and that she's at least trying to be a little bit more kind and a little bit more compassionate, even though it still just kind of feels icky to me. It does make her seem somewhat more credible, but she's still throwing people under the bus. She's still just claiming that it was all Johnny's fault for somehow magicking the jury into not believing a single word that she said, which is really odd. That's really, really odd. So the way that she's presenting this is that, one, she's telling the truth, which is obviously what she's gonna say. That's a given. Two, that Johnny Depp had all these paid employees and randos that came out of the woodworks. Even Kate Moss came out of the woodworks. That were willing to lie for him and then tell the jury not to believe a single word she said by telling her she was not credible. I don't remember that that was actually the focus of his case in chief. I don't remember that they were actually trying to undermine her credibility. All I remember is just him telling a story and getting that out. So I don't really see where that argument is from. So, but then, and this is where I run into problems, right? Then she gets on the stand and she says that she's telling the truth and that she just wasn't believed because of the 3.5 weeks of testimony from his case in chief that somehow turned the jury against her. If it's that easy, then wouldn't cases be tried the other way around? Wouldn't they start with the defendant's case in chief and then hear the plaintiff's side? You have to pick one to go first. So if what you're saying is true, that means that defamation should be way easier to win because you have the plaintiff first, right? And you can just poison the jury against you. But defamation is still notoriously hard to win. And you don't often win a defamation case. So I don't really see it. And if Johnny Depp has these magic powers, these magical powers of persuasion, how do you explain that he was able to sway 11 jurors? I mean, technically 7, but considering that a few of them were alternates and you don't know them beforehand, so they'd have to all be in favor of him for the verdict to be unanimous. But how can he then sway 7 jurors but not manage to sway 1 UK judge? And what she's positing is that the jury was taking their job so unseriously that they're not even gonna try to believe her. I'll tell you a story. I might have alluded to it in a previous video, but I'll tell you a story. I heard this from someone who was actually in the court during Amber Heard's first day of testimony, I believe. Now, I didn't hear it from him personally. I'm not that blessed to have personal contact with him, but he told about his experiences on YouTube. He streamed from the courtyard, and he told us all about it, and he expounded on the story a little bit last week. He actually met an Amber Heard supporter in the line waiting to get in, and he purposefully didn't get her on camera because the entire discourse is a little bit vitriolic and a little bit hateful at times, which I still don't condone whatsoever. And he just didn't want to open her up to it by putting her face on a camera. But she was in full support of Amber, and she went into the courtroom to listen to her testimony. And after the first part of her testimony and during lunch, or was it the end of the day? I don't know exactly, but at some point, Ian, the guy who told the story, he walked out and he actually found that lady crying. And when he asked her what was wrong, she actually just said, I don't believe her. And this is someone who came to the court to listen to her. And she was still a believer before her testimony, right? So by Amber Heard's logic, if she had watched the entire trial up to that point, and let's say for argument's sake that she had, I don't actually know, but let's say for argument's sake that she had, then she would also have been poisoned by Depp's magical voodoo powers, and then she already wouldn't have believed her before the trial started. But you see what the thing is? It's not only her, and I just picked out this story because it's so illustrative of the whole problem. So many people who still did not believe Depp before she started her testimony actually switched during her testimony. What does that tell you? If it is due to Depp's randos and everything, and all his paid employees who apparently have no integrity whatsoever, they wouldn't believe her before she even started talking. But there's so many people that just were turned off by her testimony. So don't go blaming Depp. Blame yourself. And even if you are speaking the truth, blame yourself, because it's still you. It's still you who turned them off. And it will be nice after all these weeks to see just a scintilla of accountability and some kind of self-awareness. But I'm not holding my breath. So yeah, that was a lot, even though it was only a 2-minute video and it was only a preview of the entire interview. I really need to go to bed on time tonight if I'm gonna make a video about that tomorrow, because I'm gonna need all the strength that I can muster. I am actually quite surprised that I'm not as frustrated, I'm not as angry as I was with Elaine, because Elaine was just all over the place and she was just outright blaming people and throwing out false accusations, and she is just implying the accusations, which is not a good look, but at least it's not as much in your face. She might actually, for some people who were still not really on the fence, but in the rough vicinity of the fence, she might actually score a couple of credibility points with this. She's still saying crap that simply doesn't line up with the facts that we have, and she's still saying crap that just impugns the jury and that just blames them for not having any integrity, and that also implies that people who are paid don't have a spine. Oh yeah, my spine is fine. I still have one. That's good. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, thank you so much again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want me, if there's anything specific that you want me to cover, anything from the trial or anything totally unrelated to the trial, anything that you want me to talk about, just drop me a line down in the comment section thingy, you know, where you can do this. If there's anything else you want to say to me, feedback, positive, negative, it's all welcome. Just remember to stay kind, to stay peaceful, to stay respectful, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.